Castaway.
We're wanted men.
I have spoken.
Welcome to episode 197 of the Smugglers Galaxy Podcast, your favorite Star Wars podcast for smugglers in the galaxy. I'm Glenn, and Jason is with me as always. Jason, how are you this AM?
I am good. I went to a Braves game last night
I saw that.
and they won. They beat Tampa.
Nice.
My daughter's boyfriend showed me this video of this guy yelling the most mediocre trash talk ever to the outfielders. Stuff like, hey, so and so, I bet you reply all the company emails. And so I got into the spirit of things and I yelled out, hey, so and so, I bet you drive slow in the passing lane. It was dumb, but
Did
it was
they
fun.
reply?
No.
I can totally see you doing it. But yes, it is annoying right now because it's summer and we do seem to have a lot of people that are vacationing in town, and you do have a lot of that people driving slow in the fast lane. And it's like, dude, at least do the speed limit. Or no, they do like five over, and it's like, dude, come on, let's go. Move.
Or just move over. I mean,
Right.
it's a passing lane. It's not a driving lane
Exactly.
or personal lane.
Well, you know, it is that where like 75 and 285 come together. You've got that one section where
Yes.
like it's 5 lanes of stuff.
Yeah.
People don't know how to drive in that.
It is the worst.
So
That's how they say in French, les worst.
Les worst modus, you can nigget. Your mother was a
What?
hamster and your father smelt of elderberries.
I was watching Hitman and they mentioned Homa in Hitman. The new Glenn Powell movie on Netflix. It's okay. I guess it's somewhere between a decent movie and okay, but they mentioned Homa and it takes place in Louisiana.
Huh. Homa.
That's what I said.
Oh, you maybe said it with your New York and Southern accent. Homa. Yeah, that's where Jordan's from, and I'm like 45 minutes away from there. We grew up like 45 minutes away from there. So it's called Hitman?
Yes, it's
On
with Glenn
Netflix?
Powell and the lady from Andor. It's on Netflix.
I may have to watch that just because does it even look like it's in Louisiana, or can you?
Oh, it's completely filmed in Louisiana. I can't do that.
Louisiana?
I can't do Louisiana.
In New Orleans. What's it about? A hitman?
It's inspired. I'll say it's inspired by a true story about this guy who was a professor, and that was his day job. His night job was dressing up as a hitman to, when someone wants to hire a hitman, he goes for the police and dresses up like a hitman.
Oh,
And once the money's exchanged, the person gets arrested.
interesting.
But they involve a love story into it, which is not part of the true story.
It's always got to be a love story, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
But the chick from Andor, her name's escaping me, but she's the one that gets locked up in the hotel and tortured by the ISB. She's the one that was like the communicator with the rebellion, going up the tower and sending out messages. She's in the movie too.
Okay.
So I brought it back to Star Wars.
You always bring it back to Star Wars,
Back
Jason.
to Star Wars.
Always back to Star Wars. Did you get anything fun this week?
Nope.
No.
Nope. I've been I'm working on a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on completing all of the episode 1 Micro Machines all at once.
You gotta love those deals. I love when that happens, but then it's like you're so excited, and then you realize you're done at the same moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and the issue is like some of these micro machines are worth next to nothing, and some of them are worth a pretty penny.
Right. So you end up try to pay the same for everything, and
Right.
you equal it out.
Yeah.
Did you not pre-order the Ghost?
No, because I didn't think it was gonna pre-order sell out so fast. I went to go add stuff to the. Let me step back. I'm getting excited here. Let me just slow down a little bit. No, I added it to the Target cart, but then my wife likes to add things to the Target cart. We share an account, and she likes to add things to the Target account, and it just sits there, and it's just like this thing of like, I'll eventually buy it, but I don't need to buy it right now. So there was a bunch of stuff in the cart, and I messaged her and said, "Do you need the stuff in the cart, or should I move it out?" And I didn't hear anything for like 5 minutes.
Oh,
And when I went to go, she's like, "No, just move it to save later." It was sold out.
yeah.
But
Because you had messaged it in the group that, hey, it's in one of the
yeah,
group chats, it's up, and it was like a half an hour later, and it was gone.
it's not a Target exclusive. It was
Right.
just available at Target, so it'll be available everywhere. And it's probably going to be like every other piece of the Micro Galaxy Squadron. It's going to be everywhere. And because it's a $60 piece, it's going to sit there.
Yeah, I'm thinking I may play the long game. As much as I want the Ghost, judging by the way things have been going with the Micro Galaxy Squadron, I think I may play the long game on it. But
Hmm.
I don't know if I can. Well, I do have a $30 coupon or credit on the Galaxy on their page. So if they throw it up on the page, I'll grab it. But I don't know. I
You
don't know
didn't
what to
pre-order
do,
it.
Jason. Huh?
You did not pre-order.
I did not get to pre-order it because it was already sold out in, like you said, 5 minutes.
Same thing with Darth Maul Sith Infiltrator. That's a Target exclusive. It became available, and I missed that window too.
Well, judging by the way that the Naboo starfighters and the other thing, the underwater things going, there's like 5 or 6 of them collecting dust at every target. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've been just hitting a bunch of Rosses. I actually know a guy that found one of the Sabine TIE fighters in Buford, and he's a reseller. So I reached out to him, and he said 2 other people were interested in it, and I haven't heard back from him. But I was going to throw him like a $50 offer on it. Just here's here's your time, and it's worth $50 to me, so I don't have to keep looking. And I haven't heard back from him. And the only other things I picked up were some Bill and Ted stuff. I picked up a screening copy of the VHS on eBay. That came really fast. And then I picked up a sealed copy of the VHS on eBay, and I haven't seen it move. It's coming from Canada, so I don't know if it's one of those where it's going to move around in Canada for a minute and then all of a sudden be here. Because when some stuff comes from China, it seems to sit for a long time, and then all of a sudden the tracking's not the best. So I don't know if that's the same thing with this or not, but I paid like under $10 for it, so it's a little annoying because it's been over a week. And then I ordered some. I didn't actually order. I had our buddy Matt at Nerd U sent me a message and was like, "Hey, are you interested in these?" And they were prototype Bill and Ted Pops, along with a
But
couple of, huh?
but they're prototype edition pops.
No, they're prototypes.
They're prototypes. They were in
Yes.
boxes that had a prototype sticker on
I'm
them.
assuming that was, no, they did not make like a prototype edition. It would have been like prototypes. I think it's somebody that made stickers. They better not be prototype edition Pops. They are.
When I saw that, I immediately thought of the retro collection prototypes, and I was like, oh, I guess Funko's doing the same thing. They were all like the pale color.
Right. They're all like
Uh,
one color. And I'm looking at it now, and I think because a lot of people would make up their own stickers, and it looks like it's not even, because it says prototype on the stickers. I'm pulling it up now. Now you got me thinking like but no,
It's
they're,
better to be safe than sorry.
yeah, I know. And then they had some autograph ones, and I didn't want to pay what they wanted for the autograph ones. Even the prototype ones were like can't believe I'm going to pay that for Pops. But then he messaged me because I hadn't seen, because we've got the email set up on the postal service. So like if something shipped with a tracking number, I'll get a I'm sorry, I'm frustrated right now. I'll get a notification email, and I never got the notification email. And yesterday he messages me and goes, will you be mad at me? Or you could be mad at me because I mailed them to myself.
How do you do that?
I have no clue.
Someone had a brain fart.
Yeah, he had a brain fart and mailed them to himself. So those should be here by the time this episode breaks. And yeah, I didn't get the autograph ones because I definitely feel with autographs, it's me meeting the person that I'm buying. I'm not buying the autograph. So I don't like buying pre-done autographs. As Jason swallows his water.
Yeah, I'm drinking water.
But I think the boxes, it looks like somebody took boxes for a Bill and Ted and then put a prototype sticker on it, like made the prototype sticker. Because those look like, I've never seen a prototype edition pop, especially one like this that would have been a Bill and Ted. That's not a very popular pop.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I assumed when I saw them. Somebody just made the sticker and threw the pops in a box. So it's dangerous when people know what you collect. And then I also have a line on another prototype that I have to probably sell some stuff because there's no way my wife's going to let me buy it because it's a lot of money.
What prototype?
Death. Grim Reaper, which is one that I'd like to have because I don't have the hard copy of Grim Reaper, so to have a first shot would be very nice. But
could buy other prototypes.
Goodbye, huh?
Goodbye, other prototypes. Let's see if we can get rid of the glassware. Let's see if we can get rid of the.
I already sold it. It's like I looked at my collection, or I'm thinking I haven't gone down to my collection yet to see what I could sell, but I'm thinking I could sell like I've got a first appearance of Gambit graded. It's like that's worth a couple of $100. Maybe I could sell that, but then I'm like, all this other stuff I have would become not worthless, but senseless to have. So, because I'm also trying to do a run of, if I get bored and I'm at a comic book shop, I'll look through and see Gambit covers. So I'll buy them because they're a couple of bucks a piece. So then that collection would become worthless because I sold the first, because I sold the first appearance. So yeah, I have to seriously think hard on that one because my wife and I were talking and it's like no trips in 26. Like
well, good luck with
trips.
that.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that'll work. Yeah, sure, totally. No big trips in 26 because we got so many planned in 25. Because then she told me, she's like, book a Disney vacation for yourself. So I'm looking into it. And then she was just like, oh yeah, no more trips. And I'm like, well, you just told me to book a solo Disney vacation. Oh, you can do that, but don't book anything else because we got to pay back all the trips we're taking. But
it's expensive fast.
Yeah. And then we were talking about Celebration in 27. And I'm like, if it's in the States, I'm going. So we better start saving for that.
Yeah, sure it will be.
And wherever it is, plan for a week because I'm not going to do the thing we did in California where we show up on Wednesday and the show's on Thursday because I want to do some sightseeing.
Yeah.
But that's been my week.
As far as news is concerned, Anne Morrow, the Disney Imagineer, who is the executive producer and creative director of the Galactic Star Cruiser, has left the company. It's kind of weird timing that the whole Jenny Nicholson video has been in the forefront, and the person who was spearheading the entire thing is now no longer with the company. I did hear that those that worked on the Star Cruiser kind of had a black eye within the company, and it's no surprise that the person who was in charge of putting the whole thing together is now departed. They've moved on. She's moved on to Gensler, which is an architectural firm. And I think she's going to still be working on theme park stuff there, but But still, it's just the New York Times picked up the whole Jenny Nicholson thing. They were a little late, but there was an article about like just how in general companies are screwing over their customers to get a bigger buck, and it's just leading to exploiting fans and making fans feel disenfranchised.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. That's, I think, the Disney way right now. I
It's not
think,
just the Disney way, it's a lot of
yeah.
companies doing the same thing. Disney
Um,
has just got this massive fan base, so it's just louder.
right. It's louder, and then you have people that are like, I'm gonna go to Disney, and then they end up spending like $4,000 on a weekend because they have a bunch of kids or whatever, and they're like, I didn't, you, because planning going to Disney World is a chore. You can't just show up anymore to Disney World. You've got to know what you're doing, and it does kind of stink for the people, that plan a once in a lifetime trip, and it's ruined because they've done no homework.
Right. But this this is just more about exploiting them.
Right. Well, yeah,
It's
and
not about the
then
homework, it's about Disney
right. Well,
uh uh
I guess what I'm
with a
trying to say.
bill.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, what I'm trying to say is it just adds when you have somebody who is like, okay, I'm going to go to Disney for once in a lifetime and spend all this money, and then they feel like it adds to it. It is exploiting, and then it is, I haven't done the homework, so oh, Disney, the Genie Plus is like $100 a day for my family, and they get mad. But yes, go.
You know, it's more about like we already have this fan base, so we could do the bare minimum without being too creative and just have them fork over hundreds of thousands of dollars in
Right.
total. I'm not saying one individual. And that's the business model that's being critiqued right now. Because like even in Jenny Nicholson's video, she's in the dinner room and there's a giant pillar in her view. So someone designed this in a 3D model and they're able to move around the room to see the view of the stage, and they know that there's a pillar blocking someone's view. So they spend $6,000
Oh,
for 3 nights or 2 nights, and there's a pillar blocking it. And this is the kind of stuff where it's like Disney doesn't care. They didn't take the time to say, is this worth the $6,000? It's like, no, it's Star Wars. They're just going to give it to us. And it's like they don't work for it anymore. They don't care anymore. That's the struggle.
right. No, yeah, no, I get it. I get it because it is. It's just like, hey, we're gonna do it, and people are gonna love it.
And then according to the Wrap, they did a survey of their own to see who's watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Star Wars. And at a high level, they said the audience for the Star Wars and Marvel franchises are both male skewing. Only a handful of Marvel titles had more female skewing audiences. Uh, but when it comes to Star Wars, 70% or greater male share of the audience. And 60% of the Star Wars fans are 30 and over. So it's a difficult conversation to have
Mhm.
because I feel like with the Acolyte, people hated the show before it even came out for their own reasons.
Right.
And a majority of it is based on race and based on the showrunner. And I feel like the showrunner was saying things to push people's buttons. But at this point, I feel like we can't really judge the Acolyte because it's like looking at a painting and judging the painting by just the corner.
Hmm.
And I feel like all 8 episodes will tie together, but one episode alone tells like a slow story, like episode 3. I'm not going to get into spoilers right now. It was slow. I enjoyed it, but it was slow,
Right.
and it was just like setting things up, and then something happens. But even when it happens, it's like this doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense because we're just looking at it from a certain point of view. When we see the full perspective, it's going to tell a bigger picture of the story,
Right.
and we'll understand it more. Anyways, where am I going with this?
I think we're
It's
talking. Go ahead.
cutting it back. It's like Star Wars has a future problem,
Hmm.
And when they make shows like The Acolyte and then they have that preschool show, it's not for the original trilogy fans, it's for the future, the franchise. And because 60 to 70% of the fan base are original trilogy prequel fans, they feel like Star Wars has abandoned them, when in fact Star Wars is just trying to get a whole new audience so it can last more than 20 years, for 20, 30 years, for when our generation dies. They don't want Star Wars to die with it.
Right. Well, and I agree with that, because it's like, look at what's happening in the Joe community. Look at what has already happened in the model train community. If you're not getting the younger fans involved, nobody's going to care about it. And and selfishly, as collectors, we should want the younger fans involved, because you don't want to be sitting there in 20 years, nobody wanting to purchase your collection because you're an old train guy.
And if you don't like something, put on your big boy pants and just say it's not for me and move on. Don't go online and start screaming to the high heavens that blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Just grow up.
Exactly. And I think that the people in the Acolyte, they're not doing themselves any favors right now. Sometimes it's just shut up and let the big boys handle the conversation, or, don't, I do feel, because you were saying that the showrunner was trying to push people's buttons, and I definitely feel she was trying to push some people's buttons, and it's like, you can't do that. I've always learned you got to know your audience. Yes, I like pushing people's buttons too, but if I've got $1 billion franchise behind me, I'm not going to be doing it.
She was using the pronoun they leading up to the Acolyte, and a lot of people thought that meant that the main character was not a specific gender, or was it non-binary or something like that. But in fact, spoiler, if you haven't watched The Acolyte, they're twins, and so she's referring to two people.
Right.
Did I say that already? I think I said that last week on the fireside chat.
You might have said it, and I might have been in the bathroom, or we might have not been recording at the moment. But
okay,
no, huh?
Okay,
yeah, no, it makes sense, and we also go ahead.
But to quickly, just to tie it back, but I feel like she was saying that to press buttons, knowing what she was saying, and she didn't use she. She's being honest. She was being open, and so it's like, if you go back and look at what she was saying, she's not lying and saying she when she was talking about two different people.
Right.
She's talking about both people at the same time.
Right. Ladies. When it would have just, and then I have to fault her, when it would have just been easier if she would have said she, and then people would have been like, oh, later it would have, made more sense.
But that's her pushing buttons.
Right. That's her pushing buttons. Like I said, I enjoy pushing buttons, but it's not to that level, and I'm also not a troll, and I'm not, when I say pushing button, that's like, I'm going to push this and run away. You know what I mean? Or I'll wear a t-shirt that says something that's kind of inappropriate from where I'm going, and it's not even pushing it that far. And I enjoy causing mayhem sometimes, but not a whole lot of mayhem. Just a I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I can be empathetic. I feel for the fans that feel like Star Wars has abandoned them, but the way I look at it, there's nothing that's going to be better than The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
And I'll always have The Empire Strikes Back. So, do your best. I wish you luck. Maybe you'll do something better than The Empire Strikes Back. I doubt it, because, if you want to really get into the brain's physiology, the brain doesn't fully form until you're 26. So you're quite literally a different person when you are a child than when you are an adult. And I see a lot of people like calling modern Star Wars crap. But if you were 6 years old right now, it wouldn't be crap. It'd be amazing stuff. Your brain has changed. The way you view things and the way you remember things have changed. It's just a different experience to be a child and watching Star Wars to being an adult watching Star Wars. And I don't think people realize that you're physically not the same person. And so it's like unfair to judge almost in a way. It's okay if you don't like it.
Right.
That's fine. I can be empathetic. And again, I'm sorry that you feel like Star Wars has abandoned you, but you also have to think about that perspective as well, that if you were 6 years old, would you hate it?
Right. And then that's what I tend to try to do, because I'm lucky because I got an 8-year-old grandson. So I can watch it through his eyes and he loves it.
Yeah.
You know, we can sit there and watch Mandalorian, and we could sit, he loves Baby Yoda, and it's like, that's what Baby Yoda was for. That's what Jar Jar was for. That, they weren't for us. It was to bring the comedy relief and to bring the younger generation into Star Wars. The same thing with the Ewoks. Well, we were that age when the Ewoks came out. People don't like the Ewoks, but they provided something to bring a certain people into Star Wars. So yeah, you're not gonna like everything, but just I
I'm watching The Acolyte with my daughter right now.
right, and
The
that's
same
awesome.
Yeah, it's a great father-daughter bonding experience, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm enjoying The Acolyte because of that.
Right. No, it's awesome. I mean, yeah, do I like, and I don't even, I tend to I want to shut my brain off for an hour and enjoy Star Wars. And that's what I do with the Acolyte. I've said it before. I don't like when people push their agendas, but you got to just stop and enjoy it. I don't like when either side pushes their agendas. So it don't make, I just don't like when people make stuff political when it shouldn't be made political. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy has until the end of this year, apparently, with her contract, so we'll see what happens. But, it's like, I know they've got to expand their audience base too, and not just make it all male, but when it's a male-driven thing, it's a tough balance to try to keep those fans while also attracting new ones. And with the frequency of projects that they're moving forward with, I feel like there should be like an Andor for every Acolyte, if that makes sense. Like one for them, one for the new, one for them, one for the new.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure they're doing that.
No,
But maybe the Mandalorians for the old
yeah.
and the new. I don't know. I don't
I
know.
think I'm sorry. Finish
I
what
don't
you
know.
were saying.
I don't know.
Say
I
you
don't,
don't
I
know.
don't know.
You don't know.
I don't
But
know. I don't know.
but I think Mandalorian's the perfect mix of old and new. I mean, yes, some of the old guys didn't like the Mandalorian, but I think it was the perfect mix of old and new, because you could get somebody like me who's like loves the Mandalorians, and you got my grandkids who love it too, so you can come together and enjoy it.
I also feel like stop with the TV shows and start with the movies again.
Yeah.
I'd be happy if they stopped all Disney Plus shows and they made it a cinematic experience that was once every 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like Star Wars is cinema, it's not TV.
Yeah, I can see that.
And The Acolyte was so much better on the big screen
Mm-hmm.
than it is on the small screen. And I just miss that community involvement when it comes to Star Wars, because when Yord, Yort, Yorg,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just come back to that joke from last week. When he says, "I have a bad feeling about this," the whole audience clapped and cheered, and it's like, yes, Star Wars, we're here.
Right. No, I agree with that, because it is, you forget how loud a theater is, and you forget how immersive a theater is. And I think the culture right now, we're trying to get back to theaters, and even my brain is not wrapping my head around going to a theater, because it's like, oh, I could just go wait for it to come out on my TV. But wait 6 months, which you kind of used to do that anyway, but it seems like they're hitting TVs faster than they were a year ago or 3 year, before pre-pandemic. It feels like they're hitting you can watch it on Disney Plus or a streaming service within a month of it hitting the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Or it feels like it's a theater's a formality.
So
But anyway,
that's
do you want to
that's
break
all.
the tension? Huh?
Yeah, I was just going to wrap it up and say
Wrap
that's
it up,
all
Jason.
I wanted to say about the stress right now with The Acolyte. I wish people would, drop their guard a little bit,
Yeah.
and for the lack of a better term right now, open up their heart and just say, let's see. People were struggling with the writing, but I feel like the writing was, what's the word for episode 3? The writing was a little bit naive on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably part of the structure of that episode, in that it's not lazy writing, it was that point of view, if that makes sense.
You said it was part of the structure?
Part of the structure and part of the point of view. What did you
Right.
do?
Sorry, my cat was
Oh.
right on top of all my bases, and I was afraid he was going to knock one over
Oh.
because I saw it starting to move, and I'm like, you got to get out of here, because my wife is out, so I left my door open, and the animals are coming in and out. Yeah, I don't know if I just don't know what good writing is, but yeah, I agree with that. It's like, I just turn your brain off and enjoy it for an hour.
It was from a kid's point of view, and I've just heard a lot of people saying recently that, Ted from Force, of course, and there's other people like Anakin, young Anakin, they just don't like kids in Star Wars, Omega.
Right.
And then you've got Osha and May in this one episode, and it's very kid centric,
But
which can slow
it's like,
things down.
yeah, I guess yeah. When you don't see people, go ahead.
Part of the other thing that I think showrunners should do is, yes, also be up on your Star Wars lore, but go back to the original like Flash Gordon serials, because that's where it's inspired by, and go watch the samurai shows,
Mm-hmm.
and then develop your story based on those influences, because I feel like that's more towards what Star Wars should be.
Right. I mean, those guys, the people didn't do themselves any. I'm going to yell at clouds. The guy who played York didn't do himself any good when he's talking about Anakin blowing up the Death Star.
Yeah.
And at that point, I don't know why, because there's somebody from Lucasfilm on the other side of that camera, and they didn't just stop the interview, or because it's not a live interview.
Well, in one of those, what's her face? She plays Jackie. Daphne Keene grabbed him and said, "Shut up."
I mean,
Stop
that's
talking.
the truth. Stop talking. It's like, dude, you're wrong. You should legitimately had somebody goes, you're wrong. Stop. And I think that would have been funnier than or it would have made more sense than just letting the guy go, because I've seen like musician interviews, shoot, where am I going with this? Anyway, you see a bunch of musicians, and I've seen an interview where, you guitar players with playing his guitar while somebody's talking, and somebody just reach over and slap him. It's like, somebody should have done that with him. Like, wait a minute, you're wrong. Correct him, but I don't know why they didn't. And it's not, and it feels like the interviews are being taken out of context. So people are reading the transcripts of the interviews and not hearing them. And then when you hear them, it's a totally different context.
It's funny because Yord is a very naive but self-confident individual, and he's confident in the wrong places.
Yeah.
And I feel like the actor is kind of like in character when he says the kind of stuff. Like the way he just said, like, and Anakin blows up the Death Star. It's like there's a lot of confidence in the way he said that.
Right.
Which reminded me a lot of the character. And I do like that character, Yord, because we're talking about the downfall of the Jedi, and we need to see that. We need to see the strings that lead to the Phantom Menace.
Right.
And I feel like Yord is one of them, where it's just like, I'm a Jedi and I'm confident because I am a Jedi, and Jedi can do no wrong. And
dude, you're nailing it.
And what?
No, you're hearing you describe him. It's mind blowing. You're nailing what it is.
That's what Yord is. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of Yord, because it's like I said, a string that leads to the Phantom Menace. And I'm curious because they're very vibrant in their apparel and their robes and stuff. And at some point it gets muddled in the next 100 years. So does something happen at the end of the Acolyte where, it's not like a decision they make, but it's just like, we're going to start wearing less colorful stuff because of what happened?
Right. Well, if you pay attention, they've got two different robes. They've got a ceremonial robe, which is like the all stark white. And then when they're out doing stuff, they're wearing the more traditional robes, even though, yes, they're more stark, but
they've got orange and yellow in both of those. It's not the brown that we saw in the prequels.
Okay. Maybe it's just a worn out robe that Obi-Wan's wearing. Maybe the colors have faded.
I mean, if he's got a hand-me-down, sure.
I don't know.
Maybe he's wearing Yord's robe from 100 years ago.
Yord Solo. Because of
Hasbro
the
did
shirtless thing. Because of the shirtless thing. Sorry. Go.
yeah, Hasbro did release a couple items this week. One of them was an OSHA, or was it May holographic collection figure.
Yeah.
So
What the
like
what's
it's
going
gonna
on with the
take another year before we get rid of that stuff.
right? And then they also did an Ezra holograph.
What was there?
Yeah.
You gonna get that?
No. I don't like the I don't like the holograph stuff. And I'm also struggling because Fresh Monkey Fiction are doing exclusive figures for Joe Fest. And guess what they did with them?
Ezra?
No.
Oh,
It's Monster Force. It's Operation Monster Force,
oh,
where it's a bunch of monsters. And I'm really looking forward to this line. And they did a Dracula. They did the two the good guy and the bad guy, the main characters,
Van
and they
Helsing?
made
Van Helsing?
No, Van Helsing is they did a Dracula, and then they have something called the Forgotten King, which is based off of Egyptian like pharaohs. So it's a guy
Okay.
with the suit with the pharaoh hat on. So he looks pharaoh head basically. And they both look really cool. But then when they did, they were like Richard has been saying that they're doing exclusives for Joe Fest, and I'm like, oh my god, they're doing exclusives for Joe Fest. It'll be awesome. Then they release them, and they're freaking holograph. One's ice blue, and the Dracula's like blood red.
It's transparent.
They're transparent, and I'm just like,
Like
why did
ghosts.
you do this? Because I wanted these figures so bad,
Oh.
and then you did this to them, which I almost don't want them out of principle because I gripe so much about the holographic Star Wars figures, and then they do this with those figures. But anyway, yes, and then they also released. Didn't they do the retro line for the
Well, I was gonna
Acolyte?
get there. I was gonna get there.
Yeah.
Because there's also an OSHA or May Black series, but then there was definitely OSHA TVC. And I thought that figure looked great. It looked just like out of the show. And hopefully it wasn't a digital render because it looked like a great figure. And then they
Yeah.
did a retro collection of all of the characters, all the main characters from uh, the Acolyte. But there was no villain. There was no dark side guy. That's the apprentice, which I'm assuming it's an apprentice. Um, So it's like if you were to open them and play with them, you have no bad guys to play with.
Yeah. I wonder why they did. Maybe they're trying to be secretive, but then you also hear stories that there's been background video that's been leaked, and they show who that
Yeah,
guy is.
yeah. We're not going to spoil it, but
I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I purposely haven't watched those because they have enough people saying it's a spoiler, so I don't want it spoiled.
I haven't watched it, but it does. I won't say anymore.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
seen it, but
I haven't
anyway.
seen it. I've just read who it is.
Okay. So that's kind of disappointing because I think that's the whole buildup in the series. Because they've shown everything else. And anyway, I don't want to get into it because we're going to get into it in a minute. Where was I going? But yeah, I don't know why they wanted to release that. And I'm also excited because we've been griping for years, release figures when the series is out. And they're finally doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the retro collection. I like the figures. I wish they would, I've seen the rounds and we've said about it. We've said it on previous shows, but like a retro collection set that's dedicated to the Cantina. The Cantina did cross the halfway point. We're approaching 5,000 as of this recording. I do think that we'll get to Greedo when this thing funds. So Greedo will be part of it. I'm not so sure about Nabru Leeds and the Wolf guy.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I'm just tired of people poo-pooing on things. I know they just released a video
Yep.
showing how you could set it up on a shelf where you could take a bookshelf and put it on different levels and at least show your cantina if you don't have room.
Which is smart because you hear people say, I don't have room for that. And then they're showing you with an IKEA shelf that on two shelves, you can display the entire thing. You can have the front of the cantina as a section. You could put the bar as a section. You can put some of the alcoves together and have that on the shelf. So I applaud them for trying to combat the criticism that some people have had about the project. And um, I do think that it's probably a $300-400 item that's being sold for $400 to $500.
Yeah. Well,
I
George
think
Lucas,
that's,
well, Lucasfilm needs their cut.
yeah, but I think it's valid criticism that it does seem high.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still gonna back it. I just haven't backed it yet, but I will. And it doesn't matter if I back it now or later. I was talking to a friend who will remain nameless, and that individual thought that there should be some sort of early bird award. Like
Yeah.
if you back within the first 24 hours, you will get Labru Needs or you will get Greedo. Um, which, some people might get upset if they forget or they didn't hear about it. Or at least maybe a 3-day thing so you can get the word out. Hey, there's this new cantina.
Mm-hmm.
Those that back in the first 72 hours will definitely get Greedo. And he'll be a later tier or something like that. I don't know. But there should be some sort of reward for people backing early.
Haven't they done that before?
No, they haven't done that.
Or
Maybe it's
maybe
like a
not.
booklet or something. I don't know.
Well, it's not Hasbro hasn't done it, but like when they did the the DeLorean, somebody did the DeLorean, and it was a crowdfunder. And I've known like the other people that have done crowdfunders have been like, hey, if you back within the first 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever, you get this extra. You'll get like an Einstein or something.
Or maybe
So
that
I
sticker sheet. That
for the
sticker sheet
DeLorean,
that they're offering with the cantina should have been maybe like a pre 24-hour.
that would have been perfect. I mean, it would have been a little cheesy, I think, but no, it would be easy as heck for them to just print off a couple of thousand sticker sheets. Have been like first 5,000 people, you get a sticker sheet.
Yeah.
And then that way you're not having to tool anything. You're not having, you're not, it's very cheap to produce, and it probably would have been enough to get people to back it within the first 24 hours.
Right. Right. But
Right.
right. But there probably I heard somebody was doing that this past week in a seminar that I was attending, and it's just like, so we all like to wake up in the morning, right? And it's like everybody likes waking up. That's a bad example, but you get
Right.
the gist. It's like
Yeah, no.
right.
Right. And I've noticed that I've been listening to this one podcast, and all of a sudden one of the hosts have started to say, yeah. So instead of saying right, he'll go, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's so annoying because he does it all the time. But I think right, when I say right, it's more just me being like funny about it. So
There's another one I listened to where it's like, oh yeah, no, yeah, no.
I do notice that I do kind of keep going back to things, and I'm trying to break myself of it. So we're like almost 200 episodes in, and I'm just now starting to really listen to the podcast, because it was for a minute you're just like, it sounds fine, I don't need to listen to it. And it's like,
Yeah.
I probably should listen to myself, see how I can improve.
Oh, I don't. I could care less. I couldn't care less. Couldn't care less.
How we sound?
How we sound. I just want to be more improvisational.
Right.
I wish I could be in the moment, like how I am around the house the rest of the time. I don't. Maybe it's just too early on Saturdays when we record that my brain's not functioning with the improvisational mind. But I was watching a Will Ferrell skit this past week, and it was definitely improvisational, and it was all yes and no matter how ridiculous something was, he doesn't say no. It's yes, I need to follow that. I need to, yes, that's part of the conversation now. This is, I heard you wear a diaper. And it's like, yes, I do wear a diaper. It's like, you can't say no in improv because
Right.
that kills the improv. And so it's something that I struggle with and try to be more improvisational.
Right. So you want to break the tension with a dad joke?
Yeah. Can I just say that I finally saw the cover of that
Yeah.
book? And the cover is funnier than the jokes inside of it.
Right.
Because when you look at Luke and Leia there, Luke's just like, oh, come on, man. And Leia's hiding her face in embarrassment because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
The funniest thing of that book is the cover.
Yeah. And Chewie's laughing, and R2D2's kind of like, yeah, whatever. So this is another one of your favorites where they just take a joke and put Star Wars in it.
Okay, let's get it over with.
When is Adora a Gungan?
When it's a Jar Jar.
You got it. And then it's got a picture of Jar Jar.
Misa think that's a bad joke.
It's funny because you know it before I say it. I can
Yeah.
finish the joke and you're just like, wait a minute, where does this go in real life? And you just, I think that makes it funnier than the joke.
I had to defend Revenge of the Sith this week.
Uh-oh.
I had a coworker who's not a big Star Wars fan, but he was like up at night and couldn't go to sleep. So he turned on TV and started watching Revenge of the Sith. And I had to defend it. And first it was about Natalie Portman's acting. And I gave him that one because it's like, yeah, the character kind of changes from The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and then finally to Revenge of the Sith. It's not the same character in Revenge of the Sith. She's a bit more clingy and less independent. And that's a struggle because it's like just because you have twins doesn't mean, or you having babies doesn't mean you give up the feistiness.
Yeah.
But then the argument was, well, if two individuals were fighting on a lava planet, they would both be burning to death. And I'm like, you have to let go of so much suspension of your disbelief to get to this area and be like, that's the bridge too far that they're fighting on a planet. It's like, no, it's not the flips, it's not the lightsabers, it's not the droids, it's not the shields. It's the fact that there's lava there and they'd be burning.
That's what annoys me. And I hate going, I don't want to go back to the argument on the Acolyte, but I'll go back on it. I saw somebody go on like a 5-minute rant on fire in space. And I'm like, dude, just suspend belief. It's not the fact that they're in hyperspace and they're outside of a ship. It's the fact that there's fire that you're mad about.
George Lucas, there's a quote that came up this week where he's like, there's air in space when I need it. When I want an explosion, there's air. Don't worry about it. When there's not an explosion, I couldn't care less.
Right.
So
it just,
it's a space fantasy.
Yeah, it's fantasy. It's like the whole Mary Poppins Leia thing. It's like, oh, I didn't know she could do that. And then everybody it blows their mind because, oh my God, oh, she's Mary Poppins. And it's like, oh, that's a new trick. Never mind. I just turn your mind off and enjoy Star Wars, people.
Exactly. At the end of the day, just listen to the music and the pew pews and the zoom zooms, and we all are happy.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people with this kind of culture we're in, the shock culture, people are just wanting to do it for clickbait and complain for clickbait, and
that's another problem.
Get the views. And
we talked about influencers, but we were specifically talking about Disney influencers, but Star Wars guys, it's like, how many reviews of the original Ken or Darth Vader action figure do I need?
Right.
You're not adding anything to the conversation. There's been hundreds of books. There's been hundreds of other YouTube videos. Add some value, add something new. It's not about just accumulating and like, hey, I just bought this Black Series helmet. That doesn't add any value to anything. That doesn't move the conversation forward. And there's 1,000 other people doing the exact same thing.
Right.
You're not entitled to the money and the funds that YouTube get. Anyways, I'm being negative. Let's move on.
You want to be positive about a show everybody else is being negative about?
I think I could be critical.
Critical? Yeah.
I did think the episode. Okay, so we're talking spoilers for Acolyte's episode 3.
Yes.
Which was a one-word title. Was it Belief?
I don't remember. I don't even pay attention to the titles.
There's 3 things that I wanted to talk about. So we got a new sect of witches, the thread, and then the ending, which I didn't pick up on my first viewing.
Oh, maybe I need to watch it again. So talk to me.
So number 1 is the witches.
Yes.
And their whole belief that the force is a thread, that it's there when they need it to connect things, and they can pull on the thread to get things. It's just this. It's the exact same thing as the Jedi. It's just a different way of looking at it.
I'm listening.
Cool.
I'm looking for the title of the.
I didn't have a problem with it. Some people did. I don't know if that's what people thought the Force is, probably the pregnancy thing that they were
It
probably freaking out about.
it's Destiny is the title of the.
Destiny. Yes, because we're talking about the destiny of Osha and May and how that comes to being. From Osha's point of view, you can definitely see that, the Jedi are good and May was wrong and May was misled. Osha definitely had different, I keep saying definitely. Osha has different,
Right.
right? Osha has different motivations. She wants to be part of the Jedi, whereas May wants to be part of her sisterhood.
Right.
And I think May saw more than Osha. I think Osha was protected.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm trying not to say spoilers, but I
Well,
guess
no, spoil it because you already gave the warning. So if they should
yeah.
know that by now it's been a week,
So
and let's just go
so
for it. Just go for it.
watching the show, you would think that May's motivation for hating the Jedi was that the Jedi came and they were spying. And we can get into the Jedi motivation in a minute, but from her point of view, they were spying, and that because they were there, they pulled Osha away
Hmm.
from the family. If the Jedi weren't there, Osha would be part of the sisterhood.
Right.
Um, and that's the way the show was set up, and I think that's what people think is lazy writing. But I do think that when May threw the fire down, the Jedi were doing some stuff above, that there was something going on, whether the witches possessed Tobin again, or they maybe they possessed the Wookiee, because we don't see the Wookiee at the end of the show. We see Trinity, Torben, and Soul on the ship, but we don't see the Wookiee. And so maybe they possessed the Wookiee to fight the Jedi, and the Jedi were faced with the choice of, do we let these witches go because they've done something dark, and maybe they slaughter them all, and May falls and she crawls up and she sees the Jedi fighting, and Osha doesn't see it, and May watches the Jedi kill all of the sisters.
Right. Because they both assume they're dead.
Right. But they do definitely see different things. Right now, we're made to think that it's just the Jedi coming that the May has an issue with,
Right.
and that's the reason they should die. But I do think that the Jedi were doing something more, because we did see that possession, but it didn't really go anywhere with Torben.
Yeah. But it also lets you know that it's possible. I don't, the only part I have a problem, and it's not really even a problem. It's just that whole chant I thought was kind of cheesy, but I'm like, you get over it. It's like, oh, that's cheesy. And you just, like I said, you get over it. Um,
That's also the problem with streaming shows, is that we've got 5 minutes, so stretch. It could be 30 seconds in a movie because you've only got 2 hours, but in an 8-hour show, it's like stretch.
right. And I feel, because I know there's going to eventually be the second side of the coin on this episode. And I think I don't want it to feel like they could have done it in one episode, which I
But
have a feeling that's what it's going to feel like when it's done.
but when Osha gets on the ship with Soul at the end of the show, and they have that heart to heart, if you look close enough, it's all out of focus.
Hmm.
But Torben does have his scars. He didn't have his scars early in the show.
Oh,
And it's like I said, it's out of focus. So you really have to look, but there is definitely pink on his face, red
mm,
wounds on his face, and maybe it's a editing issue. Maybe it goes nowhere. But if it was on purpose, it means that while May and Osha were fighting in jail, or locked in the room, and May decides to set fire on things. I mean, maybe that's even a faulty memory. I mean, maybe the Jedi manipulated Osha to make her think that's what happened, and that's not really what happened. That May would just be that vindictive to set her sister on fire.
yeah.
But
Yeah. And I did,
but
when they're running by the witches and they're all in a pile, you're like, something doesn't make sense here.
yeah, something doesn't
You,
add up.
you could tell something happened, but you don't know what it is yet. I want to know what happened, but like I said, I don't want it to be another episode. It'd be nice, and I don't want it to be the next episode. Let's have a couple of things happen and then show me the other side of it, or should take a half an episode and show me the other side of it, please. Because like you just said, I hate when they add fillers, and I think half that episode was a filler episode, if that makes sense. I think it's
Yeah.
something that they could have done in half the time.
I also want to say a lot of people had an issue with the pregnancy thing where the mother impregnated the other lady. But I see that as possibly a genius move because the Sith wants to create life,
Mhm.
and they want to have the ability to create, the dark side entities. And Anakin obviously was born without a father. He was just conceived with the Force, if you will.
Right.
And possibly maybe that's the reason they want May, is because May has this understanding of the Force called the thread, and she's able to develop the life. And if the Sith are trying to accumulate power and trying to do things and preserve life and preserve their life, they're going to naturally want to be able to control that.
Mhm.
And so they would want to bring her on as an apprentice so they can learn that tool and she could pass it on. So it becomes another tool in the toolbox for the Sith that we can do this.
Right.
And it's insinuated in the Plagueis book that as a result of that experiment that the dark side was trying to do, trying to preserve life and stretch it out, that the Force reacted by creating Anakin to bring balance to the Force. That's what the whole Plagueis book was essentially about. And that's why Anakin comes along to bring the balance to the Force, because the dark side was trying to go way out of whack and do things that they're not supposed to be doing, like creating life, preserving life, stretching it out. And so if they're trying to learn that tool, this would be the time. If Darth Plagueis, that book, was still in canon, this would be the time where they tried to learn that tool and add it to their repertoire. Again, I'm repeating myself and going in circles, but trying to hit home that point.
Right. Well, when it didn't hit me at the time, but when you hear everybody griping about that one, oh, they created life, it's like, isn't that what happened with Anakin? So it's like it's already there. All they did was it was a female creating life and putting it into a female, but another female. But I like you. I think it's a throwaway line, but a lot of time in Star Wars, a throwaway line weighs really heavy. So I think there's got to be some connotation to that, because that may be something they want to explore more.
It's very nebulous right now as to how Anakin became one with the Force, or conceived in the Force.
Mhm.
There's a comic book that explores that Sidious did that to a slave.
Mhm.
And it ended up being Shmi. But I also saw that Lucasfilm explained that that was just Anakin's or Darth Vader's fears, is that Sidious did that. But when you watch Revenge of the Sith and he talks about Darth Plagueis the Wise and he can create life, did Darth Plagueis create Anakin, or did he teach that to Sidious? And then at Return of the Jedi, when we've got Luke, Vader, and Sidious, is that grandfather, son, and grandson? Is that a family reunion essentially? And it hasn't been said, and they haven't come out and said yes, definitively Sidious created Anakin.
Mhm.
Excuse me, through the Force. So I think it's meant to be that way, but I think it's meant to be nebulous, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I do want to take a little bit of a right turn, because I've just had this question and I've wanted to ask you that I haven't asked you in a minute, and it's just been on my. Do they ever figure out that Palpatine's a Sith in the movies? Did Luke, Han, and Leia, do they realize, or not even Luke? Luke realizes it because of the battle, but do they ever put it together that he's a Sith, or do they even care?
Well, in The Last Jedi, Luke definitely uses Darth Sidious, and he talks about Darth Sidious rising to power. So Luke is 100% aware that Darth Sidious was master of the Force, and that his apprentice was his father. And I would imagine that Leia knows that, because there's a whole novel about Leia rising in political power, but also the secret comes out that her father was Darth Vader. So you've got this senator who's like number two to Mon Mothma, who's the chancellor, and then you've got this stain on Leia's image because her father was Darth Vader, and it's like, do we trust her? Because Darth Vader didn't take us down the right path. and
Hmm.
now we've got her daughter in charge. And how far did that apple fall from the tree? So I don't know if, and there's a lot of books, and so they might have covered that.
But like in
But
the original trilogy, it never was.
in the original trilogy, no, I think he knows. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think it
They
was
don't come
ever.
out. They don't come out and say it, but Yoda kind of insinuates it. Like, I don't know.
It was something that I thought about. I mean, yeah, you can say. I mean, and I agree with what you're saying. Is eventually in the EU they figure it out, but in the trilogy and just the movies they never figure it out. In the original trilogy, I don't.
I would bet you that after everything's over, Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda come to him through the Force and just say, "Hey, this is what happened,
Mhm.
and thank you. Your father did bring balance to the Force because who's the one that got rid of Sidious? It was Anakin. Luke didn't do anything other than suffer for the father.
Right.
Happy Father's Day, everyone. But just goes to show that the fathers do a lot.
Right.
And yeah, and he saw his son being abused, and Vader just said, "That's enough. That this is enough. I'm not going to have my kid go down this road of fear and pain and anguish." The goodness that was inside of Vader and Anakin threw Sidious down that well. So it was Anakin that did bring balance to the Force. But I would imagine it was just years later, you know, Luke doesn't have anything to do, so he starts looking through old archives. He goes to the Jedi Temple, and then I mean, obviously he doesn't start his Jedi Temple there. He goes to another planet to start fresh. Because I did see somewhere in a book that there is a dark side cave underneath the Jedi Temple,
Uh-huh.
and the Jedi were thinking that we can cleanse it by just being good in the Force and inserting our goodness into this area, and it
Right.
doesn't work. And that's how the dark side was able to sneak its way into the Jedi Council
Hmm.
and to corrupt them and to blind them, because the dark side was still there and they weren't strong enough to wipe that away. So maybe that's the reason why Luke goes to this other planet and he has all those robots building the temple and huts and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Okay.
think we've said enough. Was
And
there
I
anything else?
no, I was just thinking because you were like, well, the Wookiee wasn't there at the end of the show. Maybe because we do see the Wookiee crash landed on a planet, so maybe that's part of his thing is his punishment to
Yeah.
himself. Uh, I think we're missing a lot on the Acolyte as far as lore, and I when they said X-Files, I wasn't expecting this version of the X-Files. I was expecting more mystery and intrigue and darkness. I mean, and I think we're getting that, but I think we're getting the campy side of the X-Files too, which is fine. I mean, it does, I get, and also I'm having to work really hard to see the X-Files in it, but I feel it, it's like I could see where they're getting it from.
We'll see with the rest of the show how it goes. So maybe it's just the first two episodes that were X-Files inspired. I was just thinking, they did that relaunch of the X-Files. I was thinking this week.
Hmm.
They did the relaunch of the X-Files a couple years ago, and it was a limited series, and they did have the Monsters of the Week episodes. And in streaming, you can't have that. It's just like eight episodes of the show. There's no time to breathe. There's no episodes where it's just like, let's let this person go out on an adventure. Everything needs to tie up in the end.
Hmm.
Don't waste my time kind of attitude. It's just there's no breathing room. So, anyways,
Right.
I don't know where I'm going with that.
No, it makes sense because you did have like what did they call it a bottle episode? Is that what it's called?
Uh, a bottle episode is where people are stuck in an elevator for the whole episode.
Okay.
You're like contained in a bottle. It has
Right.
nothing to do
Okay.
with anything with the rest of the series. It's just
Right.
like,
Well, that's what when you said monster of the week, I went to a bottle episode, which it sort of is, but bottle episode means it's like they shot it on the cheap and it's in one spot. And
yes, that's a bottle episode. Monster of the Week episode is like, let's go out and investigate this case about a vampire. And at the end of the episode, they stopped the vampire, or in most cases, the vampire got away on the X-Files.
Mhm.
But it had nothing to do with the cigarette smoking man. It had nothing to do with the lone gunman or anything else that happens in the X-Files lore. the next episode might be about aliens, and then they stretch out that story about the smoking man and they tie it in. But then the following episode, they're chasing down a mummy. It has nothing to do with anything that happened before. It's
Right.
like an episode where you can just watch that one show and not have to see anything that came before to understand what's going on.
Right. And then you have 5 minutes of storyline that ties into the smoking man. And you're like, oh my God, that affects something that happened 2 weeks ago. And yeah, that's what I enjoyed about the X-Files is you could watch it without having to know the lore
Yeah.
sometimes. But then knowing the lore was that much better. But anyway, shut your minds off and enjoy Star Wars, people.
And enjoy next episode of the Smugglers Galaxy podcast. It's one that I've been working on for 6 months, and it did not disappoint.
It's a pretty incredible episode. Yeah, it actually Jason was riding a high at the end of it, so it's fun. It's a great episode.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll learn something and appreciate a new area of Star Wars collecting.
Right, you may have just done yourself a disfavor because everybody's
shot
gonna be
myself
like,
in the foot.
shot yourself in the foot. Oh man, the micro stuff's awesome. I need to go look into it.
Yeah, and suddenly the $30 play sets are $200, and it's like, what just happened? Oh, I just happened.
Right, exactly. But you're pretty good. You're pretty well set though, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, I've just been picking up pieces here and there. Like if I see a boxed item, I'll pick that up, and if it's in good shape, sealed in box. But I have all the open glue micro machines. I'm sure people could see where this is going next week, so
Well, just announce it so they can pay attention. Just if you
So the
want
design director for Galoob, not for Galoob, for Micro Machines was Jim Fong, and he worked on Micro Machines Star Wars. He worked on a bunch of stuff at Galoob. He started in 1985 and was there until the end, the bitter end. He worked on Action Fleet, so he was the guy. He was the guy. He's got tons of Easter eggs, and by tons I mean like 3 Easter eggs. That's more than any the other designer, Kenner. But he's got 3 Easter eggs hidden in the toys. He talks a little bit about that, which reminds me I need to go to Second Chance with the screwdriver and see if I can pop open the one to see if I can find a signature. Which
I'm just
it just blew my mind.
Stuff, Chance. No, don't worry about it.
It blew my mind when he talks about it because I'm like, oh, that is such an 80s thing. And it makes so much sense now. I've known about this Easter egg and I've been trying to find it. I didn't realize it was located where it's located. I don't want to spoil things, but it's such a phenomenal episode, and I'm starting to get excited again and just thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't want to give up too much away, but we've talked about stuff on the episode, and within 10 minutes of us ending the episode, he's emailing us or emailing you, sending you pictures of the stuff we just talked about, which is amazing. Yeah.
There's one thing that I've been talking about since day one, I guess, with Action Fleet. And there was an article in Entertainment Weekly that kind of confirms this bias that I had for this. I just listen, and when we come back after the episode, I don't want to spoil it. I'll talk about it. And I'm making a note. I'll talk about this one Action Fleet item that I had in my head was, one direction. It turns out it's another direction because of other things, and I was right the entire time. I wasn't wrong.
Damn it.
Also, when Jim talks about seeing Star Wars for the first time, that was the first time. That was the first public showing. And we'll just leave it at that. Thank you for listening to the Smugglers Galaxy podcast. If you could, please leave a like and a 5-star review of the show anywhere. Listen to podcasts if it's allowed. It really helps us out and points people to a show. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Send us an email or message us. We love feedback. We love to make you part of the show. Our email address is smugglersgalaxy@gmail.com. Thank you to Alfonso Riviera for the Smugglers Galaxy logo. Thank you to Levi Waterhouse for the music. People, what?
Collect for the love of it. No, I just laughed because you stumbled.
Well, I'm not reading it.
Oh, look at you, Jason. You're awesome.
Collect for the love of it. Hashtag vote with your wallet. Sabine will be on next week. So will Jim Fong. Pass on what you've learned. Be a positive force in the collecting community. This is the way.
This is the way.